Thank you, Jeremy, for the nice introduction and giving me the opportunity to talk about this unusual subjects. And we know each other for over 20 years, as Jeremy said. And of course, normally we talk about science, friends, and maybe family. But this subject is something that I will be telling you today. And I'm sure you understand that it's no fun for me to talk about this. However, I think I see it as my duty to speak up about my experience, so that I hope more Asian Americans, more scientists would join the fight to try to prevent what has happened to me from happening to other people. And so just to give you some background about myself, I was born in China and educated in China. I came to the United States in 1989. And as Jeremy introduced, I joined Penn State in 1995. And one of the important things that's relevant is this technique. We call it hybrid physical-chemical vapor deposition that we developed in 2002 for magnesium diboride, which is a superconductor. And then in 2002 to 2003, I spent my sabbatical at Stanford University in the Conductus. This is the small company that later merged with STI. And 2004, since 2004, I have been a U.S. citizen. And I moved to Temple at 2009, became interim chair in 2014, and also taking up responsibility at the university for collaboration with universities in China. And just to give you some idea about my research field, and here it lists some of the important papers that I have published over the years from the deposition of high temperature superconductors and field effect in superconductors to magnesium diboride and the nanoscale ferroelectric materials. And this is the recent work that we published in making nanoscale oxide interface and heterostructures. So that's my research field in experimental condensed matter and materials physics. And so I'm going to organize my talk by the chronology of my case. And the very first thing that happened here is in 2015, May 14th, a grand jury returned the indictment. And that date, I will show you later, is important. And just so that, that this experience has taught me a lot about knowledge about how the legal system works. I think for the government to charge anybody, they have to go to the grand jury, and then grand jury return that indictment, then they can indict somebody. So as I said, that happened on May 14th of 2015. And so after that indictment and before my arrest, actually, they just give you some ideas about what happens in the life. I was the interim chair, and then the department went through the process for a permanent chair, and I won that election. And actually, the May 19th, my dean informed me that he was going to appoint me as a permanent chair for 3 years. And then, my daughter was at college, came home, and I was taking care of these task force for collaboration with this university in China. And on May 20th, actually, I went to a science festival, which is called Pine of Science, and gave a public lecture on my work on the oxide nanostructures. And the same night, my wife actually came back from overseas from a conference. as I said in the abstract, actually we made a plan. We are going to go to a restaurant, and I read that their fried chicken was really famous. So we were planning to go there because it was not that common that all my family were together at that time. And then that obviously was changed. And so that happened in May 21st. That was a Thursday, and before 7 o'clock, I was woken up by very, very loud knocks on my door. It's extremely loud, and I wonder who would knock people's door that way. And when I opened the door, I ran down to the front door, opened the door, and saw a lot of people outside. And some of them were armed, and some had the battering ram ready to take down my door. And then the one FBI agent told me that I was arrested, and the other just came in and put handcuffs on me. And then these armed FBI agents rushed into my house, running around and rounding up my wife and my 2 daughters. So I see that one by one that they came out of their room with their hand raised. And so I asked them why I was arrested, and they wouldn't tell me. And also I was not able to talk to my family. And I grew up through Cultural Revolution in China. And at that time, it was really not unusual that people were taken away and could not see their family for a long time. So when I was taken away out of my house, and I really did not know why. I didn't know what's happening, and I didn't know how long I would be able to see them. And so I was taken to the FBI headquarters in the Center City, Philadelphia, and went through all the, like a fingerprinting, like DNA samplings, and mark shots and everything, and the interrogation. And actually later on, when they gave me to the U.S. Marshals Service to wait for my initial court appearance, I was ordered to strip naked and bend over against the wall so that U.S. Marshal could check whether I hid anything in my body. And so I was in handcuffs all the time, and during the interrogation, I was handcuffed to the table that I was sitting at. And so after about 2 hours interrogation, I still did not know why they arrested me. And so I keep asking, and then they finally told me that I was charged for having made a device which is called the pocket heater for a Chinese collaborator. And to that I said that that's absurd. The fact is that I had never gave information about the pocket heater to anybody in China. And so I was very surprised, and how could they do this kind of stupid things to charge me, and also using these techniques, sending people to the house and the armed agents and arrest them. It's really designed to inflict maximum psychological damage to me, to my family, without any thread of truth in their evidence. And so then in the afternoon, I had my first court appearance, and I was released on bail after I put up my house for the bail. And then when we finally got home, and I saw a lot of agents waiting outside of my house with the search warrants. And then they kind of searched my house for another couple of hours, and taken away boxes of all the computers and the hard drives, flash drives, and the tax returns, and it was just a terrible day. And so obviously, I knew from the very first moment that they were absolutely wrong, and they charged me for something that I never did. But I perfectly understood that if I did not defend myself successfully, I would still be in big trouble. So that's the days after that, before my arrest, and June 4th is the date for arraignment where I would plead. We understand that I need to get a team of good lawyers, and so that was a period of time which was extremely difficult. Right? How to choose a lawyer, how to get the finance together to pay for all these lawyer fees. So that was a very difficult period of time. So here are the charges. Right? The first time I saw my indictment was during my first court appearance. And so this is what they said in the indictment. They were saying that 2002 to 2003, I spent my sabbatical at this company, Conductors, which later became STI. And they were saying that individuals at Conductors invented a piece of technology which revolutionized the field of superconducting magnesium diboride thin film growth. This is pure fabrication. This is pure fabrication. Right? The Pocky heater is something that was invented by a company in Germany in the 1990s for high-temperature superconductors, and Conductors and STI modified it for its own purpose. As a matter of fact, my host at Conductors invited me to spend sabbatical there so that I can help him developing this technology. And when I was there, I did give them a lot of tips, because at that time we already succeeded in at Penn State to develop our HBCVD technique, which was very, very useful. And but the Pocky heater itself is not classified, not sensitive, but rather is very well known publicly. There were patents on it, and actually there is a Japanese researcher who just built one from the public information himself. And I'm not aware of any economic value the Pocky heater has to the U.S. company. And so the indictment was saying that I repeatedly reproduced, sold, transferred, distributed, and otherwise shared this Pocky heater with people in China for their benefit. Right? And in exchange, repeatedly sought lucrative and prestigious appointment in China. And as a matter of fact, I had never shared the Pocky heater information with anybody in China. And I did have academic collaborations with people in China, just like many of you here. And these are for advancing science, right, for publications. And it was never for financial gains. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you the email that was that were the basis for these 4 charges. Right? These 4 charges are based on 4 emails. And one is May 14th, 2010. You remember they went to the grand jury on May 14th, 2015. That's literally the last day that they could go to the grand jury to bring charge to me, because after that, statute of limitation would expire. And so I would say that's an indication that they knew themselves that they did not have a good case. And so the first email, they were saying that I confirm certain technology has been delivered to a laboratory in China and to offer my assistance. And the second, third, fourth emails are, this offer to build a world-class thin film lab in China, and this offers to build a world-class thin film lab in China, and so on and so forth. And so here are the 4 emails. The first one was talking about SRF cavity. These are superconducting radio frequency cavities that are used for high-energy linear accelerators. And I was collaborating with a colleague in Shanghai Institute of Applied Physics. And I have been advocating using magnesium diboride for superconducting RF cavities for many years. And at that time, I did not have funding from the US. And so this colleague in China, in Sinop, was willing to invest some money. So we started this collaboration. And my former students who later returned to China helped to design a system that could coat a RF cavity with magnesium diboride. Right? So I was just saying that my former postdoc told me that that system has been delivered, and I wonder whether it has been tested or used, and I will be happy to visit and happy to help. And so that was the email for the first charge, first count. The second one, oxide thin films and interfaces. In the subject, it says oxide thin films and interfaces, and nothing to do with magnesium diboride. And it was June 1st, 9:57. And so I was exploring the possibility of doing this 1,000 talents project, and they would like to build a oxide thin film labs. So I was saying that if I can have my former postdoc together and some young people, and I will be happy to taking up the challenge of building a world-class thin film labs that would include laser MBE and oxide MBE. Very specifically, that's the lab that we're going to do. And this is some guy very famous in oxide electronics, and actually they are collaborating with. I say we're good friends for over 20 years, and also are good friends with our common friends and my common friends. And so I was saying that my idea is to have laser MBE, which is my area of expertise, and oxide MBE, which are the expertise areas of these colleagues. And so we could build a lab which has both, and we will be able to do some interesting science. That's basically the idea. So this was sent to the director of the Institute of Physics in China. And a couple of minutes later, this again, the subject is Chinese, that's the 1,000 Talents program. And this was talking about oxide thin film labs as well. And this was addressed to somebody that I heard that some of you were very familiar with. Again, about oxide thin film. That's for Shanghai Jiaotong University. And this was an email later that year sent to the president of Shanghai Jiaotong University. And so I was talking about possibility of 1,000 talent project at Shanghai Jiaotong University. And I was talking about that there were places in China that was spending the resources on the oxide area. And so I was just very interested in exploring opportunities to collaborate with people in China. So these were these were approved by my dean at Temple University, and for the purpose of expanding my research capabilities and taking advantage of the resource and the people in China, and which I believe many of you are actively doing as well. And so these are the 4 emails that form the basis of the charge by the US government. We worked very hard, and as I said, it was a very, very difficult decision to choose a good lawyer. I had absolutely no experience how to go about doing that. And, but finally, we were very lucky to have engaged a team of a great lawyer. And also, when you have this, so I tell people, anybody who run into this kind of situation, I'll be more than happy to help. There are many things that if you don't have experience, I understood myself. This is the most consequential decisions I make. If I choose the wrong lawyer, I'll be finished. And so I have a lead lawyer and out of Washington, D.C., and I'll have a local lawyer because each U.S. Attorney's Office, each court does things kind of differently. You do want to have people who are familiar with the people and with the way that it's doing things. And also we have an IP attorney working with us and explaining the technical aspects of the case to the lawyer can be very frustrating. And these IP lawyers could understand our language and could also use the language that these lawyers understand to explain to them. So very important. So we pleaded not guilty on June 4th. And the next thing that happened, important, is August 21st, when my lawyer made a presentation to the government. In between, there were, so after you go through the arraignment, that will start the so-called discovery period. And the government had to give us any evidence that they were preparing to use during the trial. So during that period of time that we got the, as a matter of fact, when they arrested me, they took my computer away. They took my computer in my office away. And the temple kind of froze my, my email account, so I couldn't even access with other computers. So it was very difficult at the beginning to prepare my case. We didn't know. And then slowly they returned. They gave us a copy of my computers from which I could have all my email, all my files. And they gave us other evidences that they plan to use during the trial. And once we had this, we had a very good idea what they did. And so we prepared a presentation to the government, and that happened on 21st of August. And also we made a decision of getting affidavits from experts in my research field to tell the government that they were wrong. Of course, I, as a defendant, I would, of course, tell them that they were wrong. So they won't believe me. But we solicited affidavits from all these experts. They are literally the top expert in my research field. John Rao was a member of all these academies and fellow of the Royal Society. And further, he was the former CTO and the president of Conductus, the company that was involved in all this. He knew intimately well about our work on magnesium diboride and everything that Conductus has done. And Paul True was one of the discoverers of ITC superconductors. And David Lavalastier is an expert in applied superconductivity. And Venki Venkatesan is somebody who pioneered the technique of pulse laser deposition and had a company that sells laser MBE and PLD. And we also decided to get an affidavits from one of the inventors of pocket heater. And that's also, he's also founder of this company called Shoreline Technologies, from which I actually bought the pocket heater. And so with affidavits from these people who says that I didn't share any pocket heater information with people in China, my lawyer gave a presentation to the government. So I'm going to show your slides. It's not all the slides because it's too long, but pretty much the main ones. So, so my lawyer gave a presentation to the government, and this is the content described to the government about the pocket heater and these experts, and then told them about the difference between pocket heater with everything here that was relevant in the charges of the government to my case. So here is the pocket heater from STI. This is the figure from the patent that they filed on this technology. And basically, this is a vacuum chamber, and there's this heater that is like a can with an opening. And inside of that, there is a platen that spins. And the substrate is mounted here. That's rotated in front of this opening and then inside of the can and come to the opening and inside the can. So so these are two zones, right? Let's see what this pattern says. A method of forming magnesium diboride films in situ on the substrate comprised of the step of depositing boron onto a surface of the substrate in a deposition zone. So this opening here is the deposition zone where the boron deposition occurs. And then it moves the substrate into a reaction zone that's inside of the can where it containing pressurized gaseous magnesium. So there's a magnesium source that's heated to provide vapor into this inside that can. And so you have deposition of boron reacting with magnesium, and this happens in many RPMs. So this process just repeat, right? Moving back and then repeating. So you have deposition and reaction, deposition, reaction, and that way you form magnesium diboride. And so here is a picture, a drawing of the pocket heater. And you can see this open area. That's the deposition zone. The substrate is mounted on this platen. And then it rotates into this magnesium cell and then react. Right? So it has two zones, deposition zone and reaction zone. And then Malloy introduced to them these people who wrote affidavits to me, as I already shown earlier. And they are prominent people in the field of superconductivity and also in the field of oxide thin films. And as I said, Walter Ruby is a inventor of this pocket heater. As a matter of fact, he was saying in his affidavit that I'm very familiar with the pocket heater because I was one of the inventors of that. And he actually told my lawyer, when my lawyer contacted him, and he said that I told them that it was not my pocket heater, and they didn't seem to be interested in that. And as I said, Vanke Venkatesan is a pioneer in the pulse laser deposition, and his company also sells laser MBE systems. So this is the heater, the heater that my former postdoc designed, and we were collaborating with SINAP, Shanghai Institute of Applied Superconductivity, was working on. This is a vacuum system, and inside this part is the heater. And basically, this part is the heater. Basically, it's just a tube furnace, and it's just a tube. It's like an oven. And this shaped thing, this weird shaped thing, that's a superconducting RF cavity. And our goal is to coat the inside of this cavity with magnesium diboride. Normally, a superconducting cavity is made with superconductor niobium, bulk. And so it was a very promising alternative to coat the inside wall with a thin film because the RF field doesn't go very deep anyway. And magnesium diboride has some very promising properties for that application. So the photo and a drawing of the SINAP tube heater is shown here. And it's just two tube furnace. Right? There's not much else. And the process that we were trying to do is a variation of the HPCVD that I invented at Penn State and has absolutely nothing to do with the process at conductors or STI. And so my lawyer was telling them that the SINAP tube heater is unrelated to the STI pocket heater. Right? This is the drawing of a SINAP tube heater, and here is the drawing of the STI pocket heater. And just from the appearance, you can see it's very different things. And this is for thin films, and this is for coating the inside wall of this three-dimensional object. And they're completely different. And so the tube heater is unrelated to the pocket heater. Right? For tube heater, we have one-step process. This is for one-step process, meaning that we have the deposition happening at the same time. We provide magnesium and the boron and then form the film. And the pocket heater is two-step process. Right? There are two zones, whereas this has one zone. And in this, as I mentioned earlier, as to deposition and the reaction, deposition and reaction. And so that's two-zone processes. And this tube heater arranged to create films on interior of 3D shape, and for the pocket heater, and it's to create films on the flat surface. So they are very different in function, in principle, and in everything. That's completely different, right? So Labalestier was saying that tube heater tube heater for thin films discussed in Synapse uses HPCVD technique. That's the technique that I invented at Penn State. And STI pocket heater and tube heater are different in principle, configuration, and method. And it's in principle excluded for the formation of films on complex surface-like cavity at Synapse, right? For the pocket heater, because this platen rotates between two zones and it can be used for coating a cavity walls. And John Rao was saying that this device appeared to be fundamentally different in design concept and the principle from the pocket heater. Right? And Ward Ruby was saying that this HPCVD technique used in the tube device is in contrast to the STI pocket heater one-step process. Right? It's different in principle from the two-step process by the STI pocket heater. And he was saying that I was one of the inventor of this heater. And Vanke Venkatesan said the same. Right? So the heater that we are discussing with Synapse is something that based on the process I developed, and it has nothing to do with the STI pocket heater. And then my lawyer has to explain to the government that oxide and magnesium diboride are completely different things. Right? Oxide is a compound that contains oxygen atoms in its chemical formula. Right? Magnesium diboride, there's no oxygen in its chemical formula. And there are many uses for oxide, but when you are making oxide thin films, you need oxygen in the deposition environment. And for magnesium diboride, you don't want to have any oxygen in the deposition environment. They not only are different, and they have very different requirements. The reason we need to say this is because if you remember, the second, third, and the fourth emails were obviously about oxide thin film lab that use laser MBE and oxide MBE. Those are for oxide thin films. And to the government, to the person who handled the case, they were all the same thing. Right? And so we have to show them that this is a system, that this is actually one of my colleagues' system at Cornell University. That's for oxide MBE. And this is what I showed you earlier for the pocket heater. And you can see that the heater in oxide MBE is here. It is completely different from the pocket heater. And we show them that these will be the heater that people would use for molecular beam epitaxy. And it has no resemblance to a pocket heater. And then, so just to summarize that the oxide MBE, you have one zone versus two zones for pocket heater. You have oxygen, and here no oxygen. And normally there is no rotating platen to switch substrate between two zones. And for the pocket heater, that you have to do that. And then we have to, my lawyer has to explain to the government that laser MBE is unrelated to the pocket heater. And here is the schematic of a laser MBE system. And a laser is shined on the target, which generates a plume, and then the material is deposited on the heater, on the substrate, on the heater. And this is very different from the STI pocket heater. And my lawyer showed the government that these are the kind of heaters that people would use for laser MBE. And again, to emphasize the difference between laser MBE and the pocket heater, and I actually did not show every slide because there were more repetitions of these kind of informations. And so laser MBE, oxide MBE in oxide thin film labs do not use the STI pocket heater. Right? And the STI pocket heater technology for magnesium diboride has no value or utility for oxide thin film labs equipped with laser MBE and oxide MBE. Because in my email, this was explicitly expressed that we were trying to build an oxide thin film lab equipped with laser MBE and oxide MBE. And so the expert said the same in their affidavits. Like Paul Chu says that to my knowledge, there's no laser MBE or oxide MBE lab that uses STI MGB2 pocket heater modified to deposit oxide films. Unless there is a particular technical reason to do that. There's no reason to do that. And John Ross said the same thing. There is no reason why they would use a pocket heater. Venki Venkatesan, who actually the company sell the MBE, the PLD and laser MBE system, and he was saying that there's no use of pocket heater in these systems. And then this slide shows a schematic of a heater for HPCVD, exactly the same process we use at Penn State. And I have a collaboration with a group at Peking University who has made HPCVD system after our publication. And then I came from that university, and I know the professor, and we collaborate to build improved system. And this is the schematic of the system we built. And we have to tell the government that this is not a pocket heater, because government says that it is. And then Zhang Rao, who actually are very familiar with our HPCVD system, was saying that that is fundamentally different from the pocket heater. And it's a HPCVD heater. It's my heater. It's not the pocket heater. And so this is telling the government that a heater that was mentioned in the exchange with a researcher at Tsinghua University is a PLD heater. It's not an STI pocket heater. Right? This is an email sent from a former visiting scholar in my group who worked at Tsinghua University. The email was in Chinese. So here I translate it into English. But the subject is English, was in English. Ask help for the PLD heater. Actually, what we are talking about is a sandwich heater that has two metal plates, and then there's the heating elements that's sandwiched in between. So that's the kind of heater that we use for our PLD process. And here is the picture of some heaters in my lab. We have this spiral heating elements. We have metal plates that sandwich them between, as a heater for our PLD process. And so the Venki Venkatesan was saying that the PLD heater using thermocoax heating wire is completely unrelated to the STI pocket heater. Actually, this kind of heater are very commonly used in the PLD labs. And John Rao further volunteered to say that the STI pocket heater was not revolution after all. The STI heater was in no sense a revolutionary device. It was a modification of existing technology that was very well understood. And we show the government that the German company had a patent on the pocket heater that was published in 1998. And so So at the end of their presentation, they made a request to the government, find a qualified expert in superconductivity in oxide thin films and show him or her all of the communications between Professor Xi and the Sinap, Tsinghua University and Peking University, and ask, is there any evidence that Professor Xi shared any picture drawing or schematics of the STI pocket heater? And is there any logical reasons an oxide thin film lab using laser MBE and the oxide MBE would have used for the STI pocket heater? And also another subject is high temperature superconducting filters for cell phone-based towers. Use whether they use MGB2 or have any use for the pocket heater. Because when I was working at Conductors, I was helping the executives of Conductors to try to establish collaboration with people in China, which was used as a proof of motivation for me to obtain the pocket heater. And so that was August 21st. And then on August 27th, there was a scheduling hearing with the judge to schedule when will be the trial. And while the government proposed a trial date 8 months ahead, 8 months out, my lawyer was telling the judge, he was saying that, from our position, Your Honor, we've explained to the government why we think that factually they just made some very serious mistakes in their presentation of the case to the grand jury. If we are right, then yes, the case will get resolved. And that is going to be the basis of our motion, which we have drafted and is virtually ready to be filed in very short order. And that's the motion we now plan to share with the government in draft form. All right. So during the period before this hearing, we have prepared a motion to dismiss the indictment and listed everything that they did wrong. And further, we were ready to share that with the government. And so the judge at that point ordered us to file our motion to dismiss before September 11. Right? The judge ordered us to file that before September 11. And so on September 11, and let me see what's next. I think I need to move it back. On September 11, and actually it was 3:55 in the afternoon that my lawyer called us to say that the government decided to drop the case. And so they dropped the case. They dismissed the case without prejudice, meaning that, so this here, I'm showing you our motion, the first page of our motion. So we were saying that defendant Xiaoxing, he moves this court to dismiss the indictment pending against him. The government's entire prosecution is based on the presentation of false and misleading testimony to the grand jury, premised on the faulty understanding of basic and non-controversial scientific principles and concepts by an FBI agent who was not qualified to be the government's sole witness before the grand jury. And so we gave this to the government, and in the afternoon of September 11, the government moved to dismiss the case, saying that additional information came to the attention of the government. And they dismissed it without prejudice, meaning that they can still charge me. And 6 months later, they notified my lawyer that it would not be re-indicting my case. Right? So that's the time when it was finally over. Right? So that's what happened in my case. And the question I ask, why it matters. And of course, it mattered to us. Right? It mattered to us. And you just imagine that one day, I was a department chair and a respected researcher, and overnight I was painted, like a Chinese spy all over the internet and all over the news. And I was facing, we were facing 80 years in prison and $1 million in fine. And many friends and colleagues stopped talking to me, and we also I could not talk to my students. The university did not allow me to appear on campus, and we were always concerned about the surveillance. There was surveillance before my arrest, and we were continuous concerned about the surveillance. And also we were concerned about our personal safety and worried maybe some patriotic citizen would try to do something to this Chinese spy. And it was very difficult. And day in, day out, the pressure just built up, and sometimes it became like unbearable. And all kinds of emotions. Sometimes we are defiant, sometimes we are kind of very, we didn't know how we understand it's a real possibility that I could end up in jail. And so it was a very, very stressful time. And also we don't know how we didn't know how we would pay for the lawyer fees, right? That's counted by minutes, and it's not cheap. And so that was a very difficult period of time, and I really did not wish any innocent citizens to go through. But that's not the point that I'm talking about my experience. And I think this quote from the Supreme Court Associate Justice Louis Brandeis very well summarized it. The greatest danger to liberty lurk in the insidious encroachment by men of zeal, well-meaning but without understanding. And obviously, this guy had no understanding. But even whether it's well-meaning has been questioned by many people. Because my case is not the only case. There has been many cases. There has been the case of Sherry Chen, a hydrologist, and Eli Lilly, scientists, two Chinese guys. They were charged by the government just for the case to be dropped later. And so many people are asking the Department of Justice to investigate whether racial profiling is a factor in this. And this includes many members of the Congress, U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and many prominent scientists, engineers, and professors. Right? So if race-based persecution and persecution exist, it infringes on the constitutional right of due process and the equal protection of any American citizens. So that is wrong. Right? And further, it's not just an issue of Chinese American. This is the third talk that I talk on this subject. Right? And the first one last May at Stanford, and a few weeks ago I gave this talk at University of Maryland. And one of the students, African American students, wrote to me later that his great uncle was wrongfully convicted of raping a white elderly woman and spent nearly a quarter of a century in jail until the fingerprints in the evidence actually matched those of the real guy. And he was saying that I cannot pretend to know what you feel or struggle with. I have been trained my whole life knowing that situation such as yours could happen to me. This is not just an issue for Chinese American. This is an issue for any ethnic group which can become the victims of such practice. The other thing that I want to say is that the overreaching threatens the academic freedom. From my experience, and I have seen very clearly that there is a total lack of understanding by the law enforcement agencies on how science is done and how university operates. And so they are looking at all kinds of normal routine academic activities with suspicion. For example, this is something that's in my indictment. They were saying that in 2002, I participated in China's this National High-Tech Research Development Program as a referee. I was a panelist in their proposal review. And so they were saying that from 2002 to 2012, I repeatedly and frequently collaborated with various entities in China, including government entities. Chinese government entities, what do they mean? They mean Peking University, Tsinghua University, Shanghai Jiaotong University, Institute of Physics, Academy of Science. Any of those are Chinese entities. And so they were saying that I repeatedly offered to help them become world leaders in superconductivity. They actually are leaders in superconducting materials field. They don't really need my help in doing that, right? So these are questions that they asked me during the interrogation. Do you have collaborators with China? Have you have visitors from China? Do you have Chinese students? And do you know people that work for the Chinese government? I said, yeah, I know, I know many university presidents. And do you share samples with people in China? Right? Do you know that your research can be used in military? Have you tried to secure a position in China? And so on and so forth. Right? And these represent a total lack of understanding by them how the university runs. Right? As a matter of fact, FBI has sent the universities a white paper on higher education and national security, and talking about how foreign the intelligence agencies are taking advantage of the openness and the freedoms on the university campus. And so there are some examples. I can quickly go through some. For example, so they are saying that they can, if they get information, they can save a lot of monies. And let me see. So this is an interesting example, they say. In the universities, we want to be the first to publish. And if other people learn what we are doing, they might publish first. Then we lose that, first. And that you have to protect. Right? And so that's in their white paper. And here in their white paper, and saying that some visitors taking pictures, and the guy realized that, well, okay, so they could, they could, research is, although the research is unrestricted, the graduate advisor recognized that applications of the research could have military security, national security implications. Does your research have national security implications? Right? So sometimes research develops, it may not be classified, but down the road they may become classified. Right? And these are what they were saying. And also they were saying that sometimes foreign government invest in the universities, and that's also used as a examples. Actually, I want to show you this, and it will be interesting to hear. Where's the audio? It will be interesting to have the audio.
As I said, without realizing that you're dealing with, you think you're helping a buddy who's a researcher at a university in China, when what you're actually doing is passing information that ends up with the Chinese government. That's unwitting. I don't know whether it's the same as your implicit. Explicit would be, I'm sending this stuff to this researcher in China, and I'm doing it because I want to help the Chinese government, and I know he's hooked up with the Chinese government.
Right. So knowing or unknowing, if you are sending stuff to this guy, a university professor in China, you may be helping the Chinese government. And that's the attitude of FBI on these kind of international collaborations. However, the international collaboration is something that the US government encouraged us to do, and the university encouraged us to do. Right? And actually, in this report by the Department of State, it says US-China science and technology cooperation accelerated scientific progress in the United States, providing significant direct benefit to a range of US technical agencies. And so this is something that the US government see as a policy priority, and on the other hand, the law enforcement will catch people for doing this. And my lawyer, Peter Zannenberg, was saying that normally these kind of cases are dealt with by FBI inviting the guy to come in, explain to us, we have some issues with something you do, get your lawyer and explain to us. But these people didn't do this in my case, in some other cases. And this really terrorized many communities, like Chinese American communities and scientific communities. Now, I personally know many people who are really scared for any kind of academic collaborations with people in China. So I think this is under the pretense of fighting against economic espionage, but actually this kind of case do not help that cause, but rather it hurt that cause because it really undermines people's confidence in the legal system of this country. And like when I now see any news about these kind of things, I would always wonder, is that really true? What they are saying. And so the one thing I've been trying to do is to try to convince the national academies to conduct a research, conduct a study of benefit and risk of international collaborations, and trying to come up with some recommendations so that there will be guidelines for us whether we should do this or not do this. And you cannot just encourage people to do this and then prosecute people for doing this. Actually, there are some report from the national academies that already touched on the issues about similar to this, right? So international collaboration is really to the important benefit, interest of this country. Right? So why it matters, and I think the case like mine it matters because racial profiling violates the human rights of citizens, and overreaching threatens academic freedom. International collaboration is being prosecuted, and these cases terrorize the communities, and it hurts the fight against economic espionage. And so the cases like mine represent grave danger to liberty and damage the interests of America, and we must not allow it to repeat again. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for sharing this brave story. I think we have some time for questions. Yes.
Did your university help you at all?
University, the former provost was very supportive. Once I was arrested, he came out and said that he knew me as a person of high integrity. And so my dean was very supportive, although not publicly. As university, no. The university, my lawyer, after reading the bylaw of university and study the state law, was saying that the university should indemnify me. All my email was sent from the university address for my work. And university was saying no, he pursued those collaboration on his own. And the university did not authorize me to send those 4 emails. And the university would not do that. And then, they did not let me to come on campus. So I would say that university was not helping.
So usually there is a memorandum of understanding signed between universities when you have an international collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite common.
Mm-hmm. the collaboration I was engaged in were not university to university, and there was no money involved. And so there was no money going from one institution to the other. I think at that point there would have to be some formal, MOUs. I was just individual scientist interaction. That's why they say I was on my own. But I guess we did not really try to get MOUs for every collaboration we have with colleagues, right? Sure. For example, if you work on a paper together, many of the paper I show has foreign collaborators. We don't get MOU for every paper, but we are sending data, manuscript, drafts, and you could be unknowingly helping the foreign government.
Do you have any idea why the government initially started to investigate you?
Mm-hmm.
You think they just did a broad-based scan of any email communication, or did they get a tip from somebody?
We do not know to this date. And normally, cases like this have somebody who kind of tipped the government off, but we don't know. We have theories, but we have no proofs. We have theories, but we don't know.
It reminds me a little bit of the Wen-Ho Lee case. Do you know this one?
Yes.
And that case also collapsed in court. The people who brought the charges were reprimanded by the judge. And my question is, when the FBI loses a case like this, do the people who bring the case suffer any kind of a setback in credibility, or are they fired or just
Well,
not allowed to? The next time they try to bring a case like this, are they ignored, or do they lose anything, I guess is the
well,
question.
what I know is that the FBI agent after my case was pursuing another case. GSK. There are some scientists, some Chinese scientists, and my lawyer represent them as well. I think one thing that happened was that after my case and Jerry Chen's case, the DOJ did put out a directive that all these cases has to be approved by people at DOJ. So not just the attorney's office made decisions. They have to go through Washington.
It might be good if they had somebody who was competent in scientific matters to filter the experience before the cases are brought.
From what I have seen, that's not the point. The point is they want to make a point. And the administration want to catch Chinese spies. They just create cases. Okay, so we were very fortunate that the case finished in 4 months. And just imagine if it goes on. Right now, it cost us $220,000. If it goes on, if it went on, it could easily, if you go to trial, it's easily over $1 million. We had no idea how we would pay for that. So it's very often they charge you, we saw many cases. They could charge you with serious crimes, which later they dropped. And one of the cases, right, my lawyer also represented, they dropped very serious costs. Eventually they charged this guy for false statement. Because in his SBIR proposal, he said he's going to hire this person for this many hours, hire that person for that many hours, which will cost this much, right? These are in the budget. In reality, he didn't hire those 2 people. He hired other people to complete the task, right? But in one of his quarterly report, he still put that 2 people's name in there. Even though in other reports, he said very clearly who he hired. 2 felony charge of false statement. So, that's why, since my case was dropped, I had not submitted a single PI proposal because I was scared. When you charge all these boxes, you check all these boxes, you never know. Something could be different from what happened exactly. You could be in trouble. The other case from New York University, The guy eventually had to plead guilty for not disclosing his relationship with a Chinese company in the non-disclosure form of his university. When you fill in all these non-disclosure conflict of interest forms, you have to be very, you have to be factual. Right? Don't miss anything in there. One of his students in a group on the NIH grant actually was funded by this Chinese company. Originally, that was charged as taking bribes.
Did, in the end, you get reimbursed at all for your lawyer fees?
No, we have to pay it. We borrow money and try to come up with money. We had the legal defense fund that raised some a little bit less than 30,000, but the majority of them we have to pay.
Did your lawyers suggest that you might have a case against your own university over legal costs?
Well, it's complicated. It's complicated. I don't think bringing action against the university is something that we would pursue.
You might pay more in lawyer fees for that than what you pay.
Have you tried to get ACLU involved?
AC, they were supportive. They have been very supportive. They have been very supportive.
Sorry, I missed the first part of your talk. So is there any way that you can request some compensations for a case?
Unless you sue them. Otherwise, no.
Okay, let's thank Xiaoxing again.
Thank you. Thank you.